Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining. We're so pleased we're able to get Larry back on day 3 of BB Dev Days. Apologies if you tried to join the session yesterday and it just didn't quite work out, but we are back and ready. Larry, I beg to do this. This is his debut at BB Dev Days. He is a prolific speaker and supporter at our Power BI user group and is going to be talking about this very important topic of DAX Time Intelligence and Date Table. So about that, Larry, I'm going to leave it to you.
Oh, great. Well, thanks, Heather, for those kind words. So my name is Larry Callan. I'm the business analyst for Habitat for Humanity in Portland, Oregon. My job responsibility is to manage the metrics for the entire company. For all departments, so home ownership and construction, fundraising, which brings us to Blackboard, finance, QuickBooks, volunteer, blah, 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 all the rest of them. And the one thing that they all have in common is they all use a date table in the Power BI reports. So the date table issue has come up a few times in the user group meetings, and I thought it would be important to go over why we need it and what the requirements are. So first of all, the date table is a prerequisite model requirement for time intelligence functions. The date table is a specialized table that contains a continuous and comprehensive range of dates, which can be used to perform time analysis. You must have at least one date table in your model. I'm going to stop here for a second and say, first, we're going to go through the slides and do some explanations give you some background and context of why you need it. And then we're going to show you how to do it through slides. And then we're going to switch over to a demo at the end and actually show you physically how to do it. Okay. The primary purpose of the date table is to provide a way to group and filter data based on dates. It's a dimension table in your model. Time intelligence functions support calculations to compare and aggregate data over time periods, supporting days, months, quarters, and years, even fiscal periods. In order to use any time intelligence calculation, you need a well-formed date table. So what are the date requirements we should go through so we know basically what we need to do? So there's 6 of them. First of all, you must have a column of date type. It can either be date or date time, and that's known as the date column. This is what it looks like. As you can see, that this particular date column is also formatted to show the day of the week as the prefix. The date column must contain unique values. The date column must contain no blanks. The date column must not have any missing dates. The date column must span full years, and a year doesn't necessarily have to be a calendar year. It can be a fiscal year, but it has to be a complete 12 months. And last but not least, the date table must be marked as a date table. So here's a list of how it looks when you spell them out one by one. And here's a summary. That's the way I like to look at it. You got to have a date column. The date column has no duplicates, no blanks, no missing dates, and has to have 12 months of data. And most importantly, underlined in blue, has to be marked as a date table. And we're going to talk about that next. So what does mark as a date table mean? Well, in the demo, I'm going to show you that when you select that table, across the top of your Power BI report will be a setting, mark as date table. And you're going to mark the date table it says when, I've highlighted in yellow, that when you mark as a date table, the built-in date tables in Power BI are removed. So it's important to understand that Power BI makes it simple to work with time intelligence. Once you understand the concepts, you'll be able to do a wide range of complex time-based reporting. To make time intelligence work in Power BI, you need a date table. It definitely will not work without one. Mark the date table as such prevents Power BI from creating underlying date tables for each of the date fields in your model. So if we look at a fact table in this slide, you'll see that the fact table has numerous date columns: order date, due date, ship date, none of which are appropriate for the date table itself because they're missing dates. Now, I mentioned before that a date table is a dimension table. And as a dimension table, if we look in our model view over here on the right-hand side, you'll see that it's a simple connection between the date. I should say it's looking at the scheme in the model view. The right side of this slide shows a dimension table connected to a fact table in a one-to-many active relationship. So one here, many there. The solid line means it's active. We're going from this date, the date table, to the order date. In Power BI model, there can only be one active relationship. So in this slide on the left, you'll see the previous slide, the active relationship connected. On the right-hand side, you can look at an inactive relationship. We've connected that same date column to the ship date, and it's an inactive relationship. It's still one-to-many. You can use DAX to activate that ship date in your code. Okay, so let's talk about ways to create a date table. You can enable an auto date table, which we're going to talk about next, followed by DAX, followed by Power Query, which is my personal choice. All right, so enable auto date time. In your setup, in Power BI in the top left corner, if you go File, Options and Settings, Current File, Date Load, you will see the Auto Date Time section. And you notice that mine is unchecked. You could select that and you could do some semblance of time intelligence, but it's got some limitations. The auto date time tables are permanently hidden even from modelers like us. They don't appear in the fields pane or in the model view diagram, and its rows don't appear in the data view. Also, the table and its columns can't be directly referenced by DAX expression. So at this point, you might be saying, so why bother? And you're right. It's not going to work out for us. So the second way of doing it is DAX, which is Data Analysis Expression. And it's pretty simple to use a table function called calendar. You type in some code. We're going to look at this in the demo. You type in some code, you get a date table. You can then expand upon that date table by adding columns. So here we've added a year just with this one line of code, year 2018. We can add a month number, another simple line of code. We can add a month name by formatting a simple line of code. So that was one way. Another way of doing it is Power Query. And what is Power Query? Power Query was first announced in 2010 as a free download to Excel. Power Query is built on what was then a new query language called M. It is a mashup language, hence the letter M. It was designed to create queries that mix together data. So Power Query is a data transformation and data preparation engine. So two parts to that. Power Query comes with a graphical user interface for getting data from sources and a Power Query editor for applying transformations. Power Query Engine uses a scripting language behind the scenes for all Power Query transformations. If you want to do advanced transformation using the Power Query Engine, you can use the Advanced Editor to access the script of the query and modify it as you want. So that's worth repeating. You can use the Advanced Editor to access the script of the query and modify it as you want. Or another way of saying that is you can use the Advanced Editor to access the script of a blank query and paste in a new script, a date table. So where do you get a date table? Well, I've listed a couple of links here. I'm not sure. I mean, these are all free and public domain. So the first one is Pragmatic Works out of Florida, Radicat out of New Zealand, DataBear out of London, Enterprise DNA out of Australia. So there are many companies that have available date table scripts that you can download for free. There's a few of them out there that want you to pay for it. You know, I haven't looked at the ones you have to pay for, but they're out there. Okay, so what does it look like? So at this point, you're looking at the script. It's the first one from Pragmatic Works. It was developed in, I think, 2015, so early on with Power BI. And I've kind of done some line spacing here to make it easier to look at. So here's the most important thing you're going to hear today. You don't have to be able to write the M code in order to use the M code. A good understanding of what the M code is doing will help you when you have to go edit it. So we're going to take a quick look and break up this into sections. So the first thing I did is I've added to the complexity, but I've added comments, and they're in green with the double / ahead of them. They won't run when the code runs, they won't affect the code, but it gives us a visual of exactly what each line is doing. To further understand this, I've broken it apart into 3 different sections. The first section is a function, which we're going to show you in a second. The second section sets up the calendar dates. And the third section adds the years and the quarters and the week numbers and the month numbers to it. So, okay, so here's the first section. The first section, start date as a date, end date as a date, followed by this parentheses, equal sign, and greater than caret, which they're calling the goes to symbol. So all this function does, it creates, let me go back one, sorry. It creates this function. And a function gives you the ability to enter in with a calendar the starting date and the ending date, followed by invoke, which will create your calendar based on your input, the starting date and the ending date. All right, the second section, what it does, it creates the start date and the end date, this code here. The second set of second group of code counts the numbers. So it subtracts from the end date, it subtracts the start date and gives a count. It then converts that count into a list, and then it converts that list into a table. So that's what gives you the first row of code, the continuous uninterrupted line of dates from the number that you hard-coded in as the start date to the date that you hard-coded in as the end date. And then the third section basically is just add the year column, add the quarter column, add the week number column. And you look down here, let's say under month name, and you see that there's 4 M's. So that 4 M's is a formatting signature, which will end up showing you the full month. So it would be JUNE. If you edited the code to 3 M's, that would give you the JUN. So this is what I mean about the ability to understand the code a little better, because you may want to edit it. Okay, so now back to Power Query, and we're getting close to the demo, so thanks for hanging in here. So when you get a blank query in the advanced editor, this is what you'll see. On the right-hand side, we'll see the standard Power Query blank query. We're going to delete this and we're going to paste in the code. Let me go back over here. Okay. All right, so let's go to the demo. I hope all this works out. I'm going to minimize this. Okay. Are we seeing the Power BI screen? No. We are, okay. Okay, so over here I have a...
Sorry, Larry, I think you were going to be showing like Power BI desktop, right? We can still see, we're still seeing your notes. Demo. Yeah.
Okay, so let's see.
We literally are seeing the words Power BI demo. So that's why we're confused.
Oh, you're seeing my notes. Okay, so let me I'm going to look at the screen share. I'm going to stop sharing, then reshare. Okay?
Cool. In the meantime, people are saying that the context that you just gave was very, very helpful, Larry. So you're doing excellent.
Oh, great. Thank you. Okay.
Now you're good.
On with the show. Okay, this may be underwhelming, but it's basically straightforward. So on the right-hand side, we have a fact table, which is the AdventureWorks database. It's public information that can be shared. You know, I don't mind going public with it. It's nothing to do with Habitat for Humanity. But one thing to note in there, we have order date, we got ship date, we've got all those things we talked about in the demo. So first thing we're going to do is, oh, and I also have one key measure, which is simply the sum of fact internet sales amount. So that's the only one we're going to use for this. This is all about the calendar. So if we go into modeling and we say we want a new table, now I got to switch to, let's see here. Okay. Just to save a little bit of time, we're doing some copy and paste here. So to create the calendar table in DAX, and I've labeled this date DAX, you're going to use the calendar function. We talked about that in the slideshow, and it's just simple: start date, end date. And when we do that, we have a date table that we can pull in here. Now, nothing is connected. So let's go into our model view. Let's go find that date table. So we're going to go and we're going to connect the date to the order date. And we're going to go back into Power BI. And we see all the numbers are correct. But what we didn't do is we didn't mark it as a date table yet. So when you click on date, right up here, you'll see mark as a date table. We're going to mark it as a date table. It says select the column. I always select the continuous date column. It validates successfully. You say OK. So now you've got the date table. You have it marked as a date table. If you don't remember if you did it or not, you're going to go back in and mark as a date table, and it's going to say, do you want to unmark it? So really can't make a mistake. The next thing we're going to do is go back to the home tab, or go back to the modeling tab rather, and we're going to add a new column. We talked about that in the slideshow. That new column might be the fiscal year index. How are we doing on time, Heather?
You got like 20 minutes.
Good, good,
You're
good.
good.
Okay. Trying to talk fast. Didn't want it to crash like yesterday. Okay, so we've added the year, and we're going to drag that in. Pretty easy stuff. Now, if we want to go back to modeling and add another new column. Save that. And you'll notice that we have the four M's. So if we pull in the month name, let me just do a little housekeeping here. Okay, that's a little better. So you'll see that we've got the full name. If we go into the month name category, we can edit that. Knowing a little bit about how to edit this stuff is helpful. We just knock it down to 3M, save it again, refreshes. So now you'll get the abbreviation of the month. Okay, so that's basically pretty straightforward with using the DAX Date Table. So let's look at the Power Query, how we do it in Power Query. So we're going to start with the same fact table, the same sales total. And to do this, we're going to, go to the Home tab. We're going to Get Data. We're going to get a blank query. There's a couple different ways to get to a blank query. This is pretty straightforward. So here's the blank query. It's named query 1. We're going to change that and rename it. But if we go into the advanced editor, this is what a blank query looks like. So what we're going to do is we're going to, as we said in the slides, we're going to highlight this, hit delete, and now it's empty. It's an empty table. And I'm going to paste in a piece of code from Enterprise DNA. And a few people that I know in the Power BI users group are using this free code. So if the last one wasn't intimidating, this one really is.
Sorry, Larry. The pop-ups aren't showing. Are you sharing your whole screen or just a window?
I thought I was sharing my whole screen. So on the first part of the demo, you saw the DAX stuff, okay? But you didn't. But you're not seeing the Power Query.
Correct.
Okay. Don't know why. I'm going to stop sharing and reshare on this screen. Okay.
Okay. There's like 3 tabs. It says window and then full screen. I think with the pop-ups, the full screen option would be best.
Okay.
Let's try it again.
That work?
I don't see a pop-up yet.
What do you mean by pop-up? You're seeing all, okay. So,
we're just seeing the sales total and the number underneath.
Right, okay. So we're going to get data, go to blank query. I'm going to delete this query 1 from a couple seconds ago.
Yeah, we don't see what you're looking at now.
Oh no. How can we get that? Do we know?
Usually if you're sharing your whole screen and not just a specific window, everything on that screen should show.
Okay.
If you,
Oh, I got it. I got it. Yes, you're right.
yep. Third time's a charm. There we go. We got a pop up.
Okay. So let's go back again. I'll just delete this. Sorry, buddy.
You're good, Larry.
First day with the new fingers.
Everyone's digging everything you're doing. This is your first time ever presenting. You're great. Don't worry. You got a very supportive audience here.
Good to know. Okay, so we're going to go into the Home tab, get a blank query, and open up the Advanced Editor. And in the Advanced Editor, this is the first thing you're going to see. There's nothing in the query. It's blank. So we're going to delete this. I'm going to go over and grab my date table. Now you feel intimidated by this, right? Okay. All right, so again, just a quick look. The first statement is making a function. So when I hit done, you're going to see that function. At this point, I'm going to rename this, this query. And we're going to call it PQ for Power Query. Power Query Date Query. Okay. Okay, so here's where we're going to hard code our starting date. So based on the fact table we have, I think the data started in July of 2005. So we'll click back here a bunch of times, get to 2005, or we can just type it in and say 7/1/205. And the ending date we'll say is 7/31/2008. Okay, so note that we are hard coding the end date. Most people know when their start date, when their data started, but they may not know when their data is going to end. So we're going to hard code this now, and then at the end of the presentation or close to the end, I'm going to show you how to make it dynamic so that it changes on a regular basis. Now, two of the reasons that I use this particular table are, first of all, you can set the start and end date. And second of all, I can put in my starting fiscal month. So at Habitat, their fiscal year runs July 1st to June 30th. 7 is the start month. I can put that in. I can also add holidays. I'm not going to show you that in this demo, but you would set up a holiday, an Excel sheet with all your holidays on it. And the reason that we use it is because we have retail stores that are closed on Tuesday. We have offices that are open Monday through Friday and closed on Saturday and Sunday, and construction that is building except for Sunday and Monday. So the holidays and the days off and his working day and stuff like that are all over the place. But putting in your hard-coded start date, putting in a hard-coded end date, and your fiscal year start month, hit invoke. And the invoke function, we're going to change the name right away to dates, because that's what it is. If you look in the lower left-hand corner down here, you'll see that that script, that code that we pasted in, created 34 columns for us to edit our data. We have date, calendar year, quarter of year, month of year, day of month, month name, fiscal year, fiscal quarter. So for me, this is gold right here. This makes my time intelligence just fly off the screen. Fiscal period is very important. I'll show you that with sorting when we get to it. Okay, so we're going to close and apply. Still doing okay with time?
You have about 10, 12 minutes left, and Haley does have a question. The question is, does it calculate the same time frame from the previous year?
Does it calculate the same time? I don't think I understand the question.
Haley, you want to try again? You want to come up on stage and ask? She's going to come up and ask. Excellent. I love that.
Cool.
Come on up.
Hey,
Hi, Haley.
hey guys. So Larry, one of the most common requests I get, and it's still hand calculations at our org, is can you tell me how much money we raised or how many donors we had this same time frame last year, and then compare it to dollars we've raised, donors we have this year. So basically I have to go back in time and say, between January and the end of May last year, we raised this amount by this many donors, and compare that to this fiscal year's dollars raised donors. So I was curious if that is a column that we would in your date table, or is that a calculation that would happen in the report itself?
Okay, we may be able to answer some parts of that question in the next part of the demo, but I certainly can go back and answer it when I'm finished with what I'm doing. Does that work?
All right, perfect. Thank you.
Okay. So so we're going to go to the dates table, and as soon as I click on the dates table, we're going to get the mark as a date table. We're going to select the date column. The most important thing that you're going to do with the date table is to do that. Then we're going to go into the model view. We're going to come over here and try to find the date table. Usually it goes off to the side. And while this is considered a star schema, I usually keep my fact table at the bottom and all of my lookup tables at the top. One of the fellows who wrote one of the books Rob Colley suggested looking at it this way because it seems to be a whole lot easier to look at facts and dimensions. The dimensions are across the top, the facts are across the bottom. Just another tidbit as we go along. So the date is connected to the order date. We could also connect the date to the ship date. So I want to show you everything we talked about in the slide. So this is the one-to-many relationship that's active. This is the one-to-many relationship that's inactive. Okay, so let's go back. Let's open up the date table and look at some of the stuff that we can do. So we can pull in the fiscal year. I don't know why I've got these two sets of dates here, but there's something in this date model that does that. We can go into month name. And if you notice right here, month name is alphabetized. Let me just add a new visual. Okay, this shows it better. So if you have a slicer and you want to slice by month, right? You just want to get July's. These are not in the order I want them to be in. So they're in alphabetical order. But if I go into month name and go into sort by column and go to fiscal period, and sort that by fiscal period, that'll put them in the order in which I want. July, August, September, October, November, December, or if we, and we can format it horizontally or vertically. Okay, so in order to do what Haley wanted to do, I would probably pull in a fiscal year slicer, and then I could, if I wanted to know what, well, let's do this. Unselect these. So here you have values for full quarters. This for a particular fiscal year. Is this what you want to do, Haley? Okay.
Yes,
Okay.
that's what she
Okay.
wants. But then she wants to compare two periods, the same period last year.
Okay, so we're going to go off the reservation here based on time, you know, one of the things you could do, add a visual. You could add a card. Would that help you? You could sum the data based on the I tell you what, how about if I put together something that I think would answer your question and I email it to you? Would that work? Because there's a couple more things I really want to show you before we go. And I think I'm running out of time. So when we get back into that date table.
You're good, Larry. She said she'll follow up with you later and she didn't mean to derail you. You're doing an awesome job. And you have about 7 minutes left.
Okay. So let's go back into home view, transform data. Okay, so we talked about the dates. Okay, and this is really important because we talked about hard coding the dates in the first step when we did this enter parameters. So we entered the first date, the day that our business started, and we started taking donations. And the end date, we don't know what it is, and the fiscal month is there. So here's what we can do. If you look at the code, and again, this is M code. If you look at the code, this section of the code right here, that section of the code right there is your ending date. The hashtag date, open parentheses, 2008, comma 7, comma 31. I entered that. Okay, so if we want to make the table dynamic, what we can do is we can replace that data with another piece of code which says take the local time now, fix it, add 1 year to it, and end it at 12/31. So that's going to give you 1 year's worth of data based on today's date. So I'm going to apply that. Just take a sec. Not a big data set. And by the way, the calendar tables don't take up a lot of space in your model. They are dimension tables. Every year is 365 rows. 10 years, you know, it's very, very small compared to your donation data or sales data or any other data that you have. But right now it's recalculating the rows and changing the date. And what we're going to see is that it now will automatically change the ending date based on the calendar that we have. So when we hit, all right, let me just do this sort here. So it's end of year, 12/31 next year. This is 23, it would automatically set that. So if I go back to the source data, and let's say that I wanted to function based on my calendar year, or excuse me, my fiscal year, we just go in here and edit this a little bit. Because my fiscal year, actually 6. I want it to end on my fiscal year. Now we save that. Hit it descending. Yeah, we're inserting a step. Okay, so just by changing that one line of code, that's what we're getting. So let me show you in the advanced editor also. So it's recording all of the applied steps. The source step is where we made that change. Just a second ago. We sorted the rows the first time, then we sorted the rows the second time. So now let me just delete this. So don't be intimidated by the advanced editor. I mean, it can be your friend. So now we see that after we've deleted those steps, it deleted them in the recording. So I am going to stop sharing. Okay. So anybody have any questions? Other than Haley?
Any questions for Larry? Just lots of praise. Let's give Larry another round of applause, huh?
Everybody's so kind. So now I hope this does not come up in our Power BI user group meetings, or if it does, it's how to enhance it and make it better. I'd urge all of you to look at the Enterprise DNA has a series of date table videos. There's 3 of them. Melissa DeCorte, who wrote the code, and Brian Julius, they'll tell you how to use your holiday schedule. Just all the stuff I just showed you, I got from looking at those videos and doing some Power Query studies. So I'd strongly recommend that would be your first stop if you want to learn more.
You do have one question, and then we'll let you off the hot seat.
Yep.
Is there an order you should add the date tables? And should you add the date table before you add content to your tables?
Okay, so here's what I do. So when I'm finished, actually we're not live anymore. So when I finish, first I open up and I create the date table. And I make sure that I've got my, I add the dynamic component so that it's always changing for me. It's based on my fiscal year, blah, 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 blah. I get it exactly the way I want it to be. And then I also add a new table called key measures, which is blank. So now I've got a date table and I've got a blank key measures table, and then I save it as a Power BI template. Save it as a template, and that's the very first thing I open up every time I'm going to start a Power BI report, because the date table's there. I don't have to do it again. I know I have the same date table across the board. And then I also have that little key measures table where I want to put, I organize all my measures into one folder, as opposed to having the measures be within the different parts of the model. So I don't think there's a right or wrong way of doing it. That's the way I do it. So does that answer the question?
Yeah, I think we're good, and we're just at time, Larry. So thanks everyone for being there. You made it. You can breathe now. You did an excellent job, and thank you everyone for being here.
All right, thanks. I'll get back to you, Haley.